All right. So we've created a role called Manage App Settings. And you'll notice that this value here in this composite column is false. What does composite mean? The composite basically means that a role is kind of a meta role. It actually indicates multiple roles. It's kind of a holder for roles. It's probably easier to see this through an example. So let's create a role and we'll say administrators. Administrator, I guess technically is the role, right? Administrators would be a group, right? So administrator is the role, and this is uh, composite role for all administration permissions, something along those lines, right? Have a role, and we can associate roles. So let's assign the role of manage app settings. So now, all of a sudden, go back to realm roles. Administrator is a composite role. This is extremely helpful uh, in a variety of different situations. Um, in I can think of two kind of off the top of my head. One is if you have a maybe legacy application is not the right way to describe it, but an application that thinks about roles a very specific way, uh, where you might have several permissions that all really should be assigned, together, right? So something like manage app settings, manage users, manage themes, all of these things really should be treated together as administration tasks, and you're going to assign them together. Basically, there's no one who's going to have one role without the other. It makes a lot of sense to just kind of bundle them together as a single administrator role. Now, you might ask, why don't you just build your app to have uh, one administrator role, and whether you're going to the manage app settings screen, manage user screen, or anything like that, you go to check for the presence of the administrator role. Well, that's kind of a violation of role-based access control, um, where you want to be fairly granular about the permissions, right? Uh, a particular screen should look for a very specific permission. This helps with clarity of code. This helps with clarity of security. And it means that everything can be really declarative. You can say, from an implementation standpoint, I don't really care what the business says, uh, or who the business says should have access to this screen. I just say that if you have this particular role, you have access to this screen. But I don't have to kind of paint myself into the corner of saying that all administrators always will have access to all of these things. All right, I can define that right here through composite roles and say that with this configuration, all administrators have access to, manage app settings and whatever other roles that I define. If that changes, if we determine that, there should be an administrator and a super admin, and only super admins should be able to manage app settings. Well, now I can remove manage app settings from the administrator role. I don't have to change any code, and it's very auditable. It's very clear. That change can be documented, um, and there's no question as to what happened and what the desired outcome was and what the actual outcome was. So that's how composite roles can be super helpful. And now in this situation, we should probably change our admins group to, instead of having manage app settings directly, to just get rid of that, unassign, and we should assign the role of administrator, right? In this case, we're kind of creating a one-to-one between groups and roles. Again, why don't we just assign Brian the administrator role directly? Well, we could, but then you start having to go to each individual user to figure out what they have access to do, what they're allowed to do. Uh, Whereas if you want to see who has the administrator role or who is an admin, you can just go to groups, admins, members. Brian's an admin. Right now, Brian's the only admin. So anything that an admin can do, Brian is the only one who could have done it. Right? This makes security super simple, super straightforward, really easy to document, really easy to follow. Um, and I, I think roles, they are so unassuming, but they are really the true power of any access control system, and especially the way Keycloak does it. So that's only scratching the surface. This video and the previous video are only scratching the surface of what roles can do. Um, we will talk about clients and client roles in a later video, but actually, let's talk about that in the next video.